Welcome back, class. So in this video of the puzzle cube assignment, we're actually going to take a look at how to deal with the drawings. Specifically for this assignment, you're going to be turning in a PDF file with 7 pages to it, one for the view of the puzzle piece assembled, one of each of the 5 puzzle pieces with their dimensional drawings, and then a final page for the answer key, very similar to what you used to go ahead and do the assembly itself. So within Inventor, we can see that we already have the assembly file finished up. All the pieces are locked in place. So the next step is to go ahead and create the drawing. Now by default, Inventor is going to be creating a D-sized sheet of paper that's poster sized, and it's too large for what we need to do, and certainly too large to be able to print out. So to fix this, we're going to right click anywhere in, not on the page, but in the browser on the sheet to go ahead and tell it that we're going to edit the sheet, and we're going to change it to a size A, which is a standard 8.5 by 11 piece of printer paper size. With that changed, the title block scaled up pretty large. It's taking up probably about 1/3 of the sheet, and it's a little large for what we need to do. So in this case, we need to delete the ANSI large format by right-clicking and deleting, and then we're going to go into the drawing resources, Titleblocks, and double-click on ANSI A to get something a bit more reasonably sized. Titleblocks still take up a good amount of information, but good amount of space, because they also provide a good amount of information, which right now isn't in the file format. So what we need to do is under File, iProperties, in the summary, we can actually put in the title of Puzzle Cube. We can change the author name, since many of you are probably seeing your student ID numbers, and the company of Southeast Raleigh. To go ahead and apply, close the window, and we'll see that the title block will get updated. Now it is possible to put in some of the other information like checked by, quality assurance, manufacturing, but right now we're not going to worry too much about this. With the format of the sheet taken care of, our next step is to actually start placing in the drawings of the pieces that we've already worked with. So by clicking on base, basically saying that this is going to be the base view, we can go ahead and place the assembly file. But as you can see, this two-dimensional doesn't represent the drawing, the object, that well. So by manipulating the view cube for that drawing, we can actually change it into the isometric drawing that we want. Within the drawing view window, we can also make sure that we scale it up. So we can fill it up to fit size. Now, 2:1 ratio is not going to work that well, but 1:1 will certainly work fine. Now, if you want to, you can of course place, step up. So by placing that, we notice that the colors disappeared. Mostly your drawing files are going to be black and white lines. That's easier to print off, easier to communicate. But in this case, we certainly don't want to miss the color, so we also need to enable the shaded view. Enabling that, the colors reappear, and we can actually place a second puzzle cube, and we can actually show maybe the opposite side. Okay, so need to switch around my orientation a little bit. So in this case, we have our front view and a back view, and we can actually label them as such. Very easy to forget to include the shading. Okay. Now, with one drawing taken care of, we can create a new sheet and start by putting in our drawing files. Now in this case, since the assembly file is opened and the only one that it's easily referencing to, we actually need to go and open a different existing file. In this case, we can say that we want to work with the green puzzle piece since that was our first. Selecting that, having it set to go ahead and include the hidden lines and some of the other information, we can roughly place it in the drawing file, and then we can then have it by going back into the drawing view and actually go above or to the right. We can include other parts of the drawing. So I was able to go ahead and place the front view, select it as such, click once above it for the top view, once to the right for the side view, and then off at a diagonal to include the isometric view. Create the pieces, and in this case we don't need to include the shading for the front, top, or right side view, but we would want to include the shading for the isometric view. With the drawings created, we then need to include dimensions, the actual sizes of them. So under the Annotations tab, we have our dimensioning tool, which operates the same way that it did when we were using it to create the models in the first place. So remember, under the dimensioning rules, we should have the overall width shown. Ideally, the dimensions will be between the different sketches. We need to include enough information that we have it fully drawn out, so we can at least calculate unknown values. We can use the different views to help us go ahead and piece the information together. And we can go by some of the suggested distances, but not necessary for some cases. So in this case, we've got the width, the height, and then we'll include some depth information. Now, while a lot of this information is looking the same, we do need to remember that orientation is communicating where the information is and what it's measuring. So width, height, and depth. Okay. You might be able to apply a lot of the dimensions to a single drawing, but within Inventor, there's certainly no harm in including all of the different views and considering where it's going to be best to share the information. On the final page, so we go back into Place Views, New Sheet. Let's talk about how you're going to create the multi-step drawings. So in this case, similar to what I showed you in the first sheet, we're going to have multiple copies of the cube showing up. We will go ahead and start labeling them as step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and we're going to keep them at the 1/2 dimension. But when you label something, and I didn't mention this in the first part, make sure you turn on visibility. Okay? And since, like the other isometric three-dimensional views, we will want to make sure that the shaded view is included. With that set up, though, we can now copy and paste. This is one of the few cases where we can actually copy and paste information within Inventor. So we can place them, put in the multiple copies, and take a little while to go ahead and make sure that they're fairly lined up. If we need to, we can select all of them to go ahead and shift everything. And in this case, we see that they're all step 1 and that we're seeing all of the components in them. So we can double click each object to change the label as needed. And now, to actually hide some of the existing components, we go into the browser to each one that is labeled. So for step 1, we know that we need to expand it out, and we need to hide everything except for that original green piece. So to hide them, right-click, turn off visibility. You can do that as individual portions, or we can shift-select multiple parts to then turn off visibility, at which point we see that only the green piece is remaining. Repeat the process as many times as needed, working your way through, recreating the puzzle assemblies. And then once all of this is done, we need to make sure that you are exporting the files as a drawing. So make sure that you're saving the appropriate drawing file, in this case, the puzzle cube assembly, or we can say this is going to be the drawing. Save the file in the same folder that we've got everything else located at. Update all the pieces as needed. And then for the part that you're finally going to submit, we need to export a PDF file. Now, by default, it's only going to export the one sheet that you're looking at. To include all of the 7 pieces that you should have, we need to make sure that under Options, all sheets are included, at which point we hit OK. We can save our file, and then when we go in, make sure you're verifying your work before you submit it. And by double-clicking on this, we can see that all of the pages that I've created have been saved into the document. So that should hopefully walk you through the entire process, and I look forward to seeing your work getting turned in.